Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome back once again to the Fat Cat Collection. Today, the topic of the video is going to be why are Invicta watches so cheap? And I'm going to give you guys my opinion on why they're cheap. Now, I don't work for Invicta, although I do refer to Invicta. I don't work there. I don't have access to, I would love to see what an Invicta factory looks like. And I'm just going to give you guys my opinions, and these are solely my opinions on why Invicta watches are so cheap. And honestly, I'm going to give you my opinions on why a lot of things are so cheap. And ultimately, this is probably going to be common sense to a lot of you, but as with YouTube, the algorithm, I like to create fresh content. You guys know, if you do run a YouTube channel, that no video that you put up lasts forever. I mean, ultimately, there is an expiration, and as long as a video is performing well, it'll continue to perform well. But there is a time frame. I have videos that were, super popular that you can't even find now. So I do like to put up the fresh content. So I do apologize. Not really, but if you've seen top videos like this before, for you guys who watch me over and over again over the years, it might sound a little bit repetitive, but if you like my style and you like what I have to say, then you'll probably enjoy the video. So anyway, why are Invicta watches so cheap? Now, remember, I want you guys to think about price, right? Price does not dictate quality, especially in the watch world, right? I can think of another thing, like in the cologne world is another perfect example, is that you do not have to spend $300 on a bottle of cologne to smell good. You do not have to spend $300 on a bottle of cologne to smell unique, okay? Now the difference is, and this isn't going to be about colognes, but there are differences, of course, with really high-end, higher quality fragrances compared to entry-level, very affordable fragrances. But that's, again, not always true. There are fragrances that I have from some, European houses that are extremely affordable when compared to mainstream, expensive brands that are just as good, just as amazing ingredients, and longevity projection is, in some cases, better, right? So again, price is dictated by many, many factors, and quality is a very small part of that. So with Invicta, like most things that are really affordable, they're made outside the country. Now, I'm predicting or assuming that a lot of Invicta watches are made in some Asian countries. Could be China. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure if you want to research that, you can. You would think with a guy who likes the brand so much, I would know. But ultimately, I just don't really care where they're actually made. When you look at most things that are made in the United States, you are hard-pressed to find anything that is made here. And remember, the old Swiss-made designation really is a very dated, old, meaningless designation. A watch back in the day, if we start looking at like the early 80s, 90s, that time, when you looked at like a lot of the fake watches that you would even get like from Canal Street, Chinatown, places like that, New York, lots of different places, different countries, you find replicas and fakes still all over the place, right? But when you looked at watches like that, there was a real difference in quality from something Swiss-made and watches like that. From something Swiss-made and even Japanese made watches, right? I always go back to the old electronics argument. When electronics back in the day had to be made in Japan to be of quality. Chinese electronics were garbage. But remember, the world progresses. Things change. And if you look at what is made nowadays, most things are made in China, right? And these are not, these little mom and pop factories. These are state-of-the-art factories producing products. I encourage you to go into a Home Depot, to go into a Walmart, go into any store that you want to walk into and try to find something made in the United States anymore. Again, a reason why is because of the labor rates and because of what the Americans want. What people want are cheap quality goods. And you don't have to spend a lot of money to get that nowadays. And watches are no different. We don't look at I find it in the watch community puzzling when guys are like, oh, cheap Chinese-made watches. Like, did you even put any thought process in that statement at all? I mean, what about every TV out there? There's no difference in a TV and a watch. When it comes down to a company wanting to manufacture something, they will do it to the best of their ability. You can see it all across the board when it comes to electronics. Go look at where TVs are made. They're all made in China. And is there some Swiss-made TV company out there? The Swiss aren't doing anything spectacular. These watches, that's a very dated term, and that's why that you can find watches that are called Swiss made that are made in China nowadays. And because the designation is pretty loose. And the reason it's pretty loose is because it's pretty meaningless. If there was a real, insane level of quality that meant this watch is Swiss made, and in order for you to be Swiss made and for you to have that on your watch, then you're going to have to really go through some hoops to make sure you're making a watch that's of quality. Why do you think that watches can basically be Swiss made and made in China? It's because that designation's meaningless. It's a selling point. It's a selling sham, in my opinion, to get people to pay more for a watch when you really don't have to. Seiko is a perfect example of a company who, is making quality products. But again, even Seiko has become overpriced. You can get a watch that is easily just as nice as Seiko for $80. And so, Invicta, now this may change. Invicta, I think their whole marketing plan is volume. Invicta really speaks to the collector. There are very few brands out there that people collect. You might have a guy with a watch collection and say, oh, I got a collection. How many got? 5? He might have a Seiko, a Rolex, maybe another watch, right? Casio, G-Shock, something, right? Again, all nice watches. But when it comes to Invicta, they make collectors. Invicta, the company Invicta builds collectors, okay? Guys who would never even think of collecting watches or find that fun. Invicta has groomed men and women to enjoy this hobby, to actually make a collector as somebody who wasn't, when no other brand can do that. Guys don't, I'm not saying there aren't guys out there who collect Citizen watches or Bulova, sure, but not like the insanity of Invicta collectors. And that tells me right there that the brand is doing something right. People don't buy one. They buy 2, they come back for more. They buy hundreds, they buy thousands. It's absolutely insane. And a company who can get that out of a person is doing something right with the quality, okay? So why are they so cheap? They're so cheap because, again, they made overseas, but they're not passing. They're not trying to maximize their profit. They deal in volume. They deal in repeat business, in my opinion. When it comes to a guy buying a watch that's made in China, right? A lot of guys are going to buy that watch, and they're going to have it for X number of years, if not forever. And they may not ever want another one. My dad is a perfect example of somebody like that. My dad, I got him a Neymar. It was a sponsorship arrangement, right? It has a 10-year battery life. It's an incredible quality Submariner style watch. I already have 4 other Neymars, so I gifted it to him. He loves it. He wears it every single day. He said it's been the best watch he's ever owned. He loves the watch. It's a nice quality watch. Pro Diver quality watch, right? With the addition of a sapphire crystal and a better battery life, right? He loves it. Now, he's not going to go out and be like, oh, I need another Neymar. Whereas somebody like me, and I think a lot of Invicta collectors are obsessive, we need to have another. We need more. And I think that's kind of the attitude. And I think that can be said, too, for Rolex collectors, because they would love to have more, but ultimately, they're extremely expensive. Most guys aren't going to be able to have multiple Rolex watches. Some might be very successful. I'm sure many guys do. But the average, on the whole of people, don't. But Invicta is an affordable brand. It's a watch that anybody can really afford. Even if you're in a really bad spot, it may not be something that's on your priority list. But really, $60 for an Invicta Pro Diver right now, really, that's pretty much anybody can really afford that, again, unless you're really down on your luck. It's a very affordable brand is my point. Invicta is passing that savings on to their customer because they know their customer is going to be back for seconds, thirds, and fourths. If a lot of these Kickstarter brands, a lot of these other brands out there don't do that. They basically will have a same watch, a Chinese-made watch, right? Getting those cheap labor rates, a nice quality watch. We see them all over Indiegogo, all over Kickstarter. It's the same thing over and over again, Hey, we have a brand new, crowd-funded watch. Ooh, it's our newest, dive watch. It's a Submariner homage, right? Everybody and their brother does it because they do it because it's such a popular design. Because people do like the Rolex, and a lot of people do want to have that look without spending that amount of money. So there is a market for that. So that's why it's a very safe bet because they know that people will buy that. It will sell. It's not like something that's really unique and different, like a lot of the watches Invicta or even Aragon makes, where it's like, all right, we don't, for somebody who's not already an established collector or somebody who's aware of the brand, they may not want to go with something like a Millipede, like a, Grand Octane, right? But but the Rolex, I mean, it's a very safe bet, right? So that's why a lot of companies copy that design, that style. You know, it's sellable. But they usually don't pass that savings on. And I know because I've worked with a lot of these different companies who generally, on average, those Chinese-made, you know, and I'm not using mass produced as a bad thing, but this Chinese, and not even Chinese-made, it's great. I love Chinese-made stuff. Not the best for our job market, but that's a different argument altogether. But it's here, it's being made, and you can't stop the train now. You can't stop the ball from rolling, so why not enjoy the products? What these companies will do is basically make that watch, and Invicta will charge you $60 for, but they will just charge you $600 for it. And really, at the end of the day, when you compare the quality differences, they're still 316 stainless steel. They may have a slightly better movement on paper, better like an ETA versus an H35. What I know is a lot of these companies will make two different variations. They'll make the $300 NH35 version, then the $600 ETA, you know, value, not value, but the ETA is usually used quite often, actually, or one of the ETAs. So, you know, but again, that price point, that is still on par with your $60 Pro Diver, right? So they're just charging you more for the watch and making more of a profit. Now, these idiots out there will be like, oh, Invicta with their deceptive marketing, their deceptive pricing. Nonsense. You know, yes, I agree that Invicta really doesn't have to do that kind of insane markup. You know, it's the old, I think it's a very dated way to sell things. But it must still work because they're still doing it. So if there are some people out there who must really, and I'm not dissing at all. Everybody's got a different skill set. Everybody's got a different amount of information. You know, if you don't know, you know, about a watch, you know, like my mom's a perfect example. She'll see a watch because she knows I love watches. So she saw a Stour in a magazine the other day, and it said, this is a $2,000 watch. And I'm like, well, Mom, it's not really a $2,000 watch. I'm sure you can find that watch for a lot less. You know, the old high price red line through it, cheaper price is something that's been done, you know, in the entire history of people buying and selling things. It's no different. Now, I do think that Invicta really, it does go above, a little crazy when it comes to their pricing, when they're like $5,000 MSRP, when, you know, you're getting it for $3,000. And I do wish they wouldn't do that. I wish they would take a little bit more of a less drastic approach. I'm not sure why they really do that, because they really don't have to, because guys know what quality you get from Invicta. Once you give the brand a chance, you will be back for more. It's as simple as that. I've never, all my years of putting up YouTube videos, I've never had a guy say, I bought an Invicta, was not happy with the quality, I'll never buy another one. I've had guys who have had, you know, the silicone strap, right, the rubber strap, have it fail. Be like, I'm disappointed. That's why I never recommend that in any watch brand. I always recommend you get leather if you like that look. You know, your NATO straps are extremely durable. I would really stay clear of any kind of rubber. You know, anything that has the potential to dry out, it has the potential to fail, right? Now, Isoframe's a different story. If you like that look, I would highly encourage you to check out Isoframe. They are incredible straps if you like that dive rubberish look. But, you know, I have Invicta watches, a couple that have, you know, rubber straps, and I haven't had any problems with them. So, you know, and they're probably about 3 years old. That might change. I have had the Sterling watch that I never wore, maybe once, right? Got it from the company, put it in my watch box. I wasn't a huge, you know, I'm not a huge fan of it. Came back 2 years later, and the band was in 2 pieces. 3 pieces, actually. You had the watch, 2 chunks, and then 2 for separate pieces. So, you know, any watch can fail, you know, develop problems. You know, these things happen. And I always stay clear of that type of strap, right? And I am generally a bracelet-style strap guy. So a bracelet watch, you know, I don't really like leather. I like the way steel looks around my wrist more than that. So you're always safe with that, you know. So again, you know, Invicta brands, you know, they're so cheap because like anything else, like every other brand out there for the most part, that's made in China, right? The labor rates are cheap. They make these watches and they're marked up, right? It just depends on how a company wants to market that watch and mark it up. Brands like Rolex are no different. Their labor rates are extremely high. They pay their employees, and this is a good thing too. They pay their employees really well. There's a lot more hands-on when it comes to these watches and quality control. Absolutely, but you can see plenty of Rolex watches without the pip lining up. People do have problems with them. It has happened, you know. Nothing is perfect. Now, I would say, you know, I don't know, you know, I don't have information as far as, you know, what comes back with manufacturer defects from Invicta versus Rolex, I have no idea. But and also, you'll never find that out unless you work for Rolex. So they would never let you know that real number, because there is the element of luxury with that brand. When you think Rolex, you automatically think highest quality watch, right? Super high quality. I mean, brands can't touch it. And really, you can have good and bad luck with anything. So remember, Rolex watches, brands like that, when they're handmade, they're made in countries like Rolex watches, I believe, are made in Switzerland. The Swiss do not pay their employees what they pay their employees in China, right? So all that gets passed on to the consumer, you know. It's not always about quality. So just kind of keep that in mind. Again, these are just my opinions, but just know at the end of the day, anything that I tell you guys, you know, again, is my opinion, but I'm using my own experiences to give you the best guidance. And I can tell you that based on the 160 watches I have, if you ever have a question on what I have, drop me a comment, drop me an email. I mean, again, I'll throw a few brands out there: Visser, Aquadive, you know, Pagani, Ligi, Steel Dive, Victor Aragon Bulova, Seiko, Sterling, Aragon, Casio, Timex. I mean, I have a pretty broad selection of watches, and all different price points. And I can tell you that, and I've handled many different watches at many different price points, and I can tell you at the end of the day, the differences that you're going to see with a watch that costs $5,000 versus $50 is mainly microscopic. Now, again, there are $50 watches. Let's say $100, right? I hate using price, but let's just say we look at a Pro Diver and we look at like a Kenneth Cole watch from, you know, one of the brick and mortar stores, and then we look at a, you know, Rolex. Yeah, you're going to feel differences in all three, right? But I'll tell you right now, the differences you're going to feel between the Invicta and the Rolex, a lot harder to tell the difference. For somebody who doesn't have any brand recognition at all, that knows nothing about anything, the tangible things you're going to pick up, you're going to have a really hard time finding any differences between that Rolex and that Invicta. Again, for a guy who knows more, you might get out your jeweler's loupe and look at the fine finishing that you can't see with the naked eye. You might see a better clasp, right? You might see that Rolex clasp is a lot more involved with their glide lock system. That might be something to clue you in. But again, at the end of the day, the other clasp still holds the watch down, right? It still works. One might be a little nicer to look at. You might look at that and judge that based on quality. But remember, at the end of the day, nothing lasts forever, and nothing, you know, you'll always see guys, make sure your Rolex, I had to get my Rolex serviced. Well, why do you have to get your Rolex serviced? I don't service any of my watches. They all work great. Why is it you have to get the Rolex serviced? Because it is a high-performing machine. And to keep it a high-performing, accurate machine, it needs maintenance. And if you were to maintain an Invicta Pro Diver with a Seiko NH35 movement the way you would a Rolex at $600 a pop every year, whatever it is, of course, you know, the Invicta is going to be just as reliable, and you're prolonging the life of it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, these watches, no matter what brand you get, they're all super reliable. They're all really nice. And, you know, for the price point, when you're looking at a $100 watch, if it lasts me 10 years and it fails, I'm not too bent out of shape about it. My Rolex, you know, what's that going to cost me to get fixed, right? So, again, these are things I look at when I buy anything, you know. There's lots of great shirts out there I see. You know, if I see a shirt that's $40, I'm like, man, that's a little steep, you know. I mean, if I see, I love wheels, you know. I put them on my car, you know, I got wheels on all my cars, right? I remember I paid for my Anteras $4,000, right, for 18s. They were $650 a wheel. But I only went with those not because I was like, ooh, it's an Antera, it's Italian made. I got it because that was the design I liked. Now, it is a nice wheel, but I can't say it's any better than my Lexanis, you know. Now, we look at really affordable wheels like $600, you know, yeah, the chrome, the quality, there is a difference there. But again, you know, knowing what's out there, you kind of know what you're getting when you know, buy from certain brands. And so, you know, again, when you go looking at wheels nowadays, would I go buy an Antera when I get a Lexani for like half the price when the quality is exactly the same? I wouldn't, you know. So, again, always buy what you like. Buy what generally makes you happy. I think that, you know, in the world we live in, anything you can do to, you know, be happy is a good thing, you know. And I think if a Rolex watch is what makes you happy, then, man, knock yourself out. Get it. Enjoy it. Wear it in good health. But don't ever think that you have something that is so that puts you on a different level than the rest of us, because ultimately at the end of the day, there's lots of people who can, you know, buy 50 Rolexes out there and they choose not to wear them. There's other brands out there. You know, if I was a filthy rich guy, right, filthy rich, I would probably own a Rolex just for bragging rights. That would be the only reason, is just to have that on my wrist. But ultimately, when I really think about it logically, I just buy the fake. And then you'd be hopping out of a $100,000 sports car. Nobody's going to know the difference. You know, I mean, I think Jacob and companies are more appealing to me. You know, to me, they're really artistic. They're very beautiful. The Rolex, why, you know, I can't buy a Jacob and Company watch that looks like it by another company. You want that look, you got to go Jacob. With Rolex, I can buy 100 different watches that look exactly the same. And again, I don't want this to be about I'm not bashing Rolex or anybody who likes the brand at all. It's a fine watch, absolutely. They're doing something right. They've been in business for years. And what's more insane is people are paying more than MSRP. So in my mind, what's worse? Invicta claiming a huge MSRP and selling the watch for an amazing value, or Rolex having an MSRP and selling the watch for double, you know? That won't go on forever, I'll tell you right now. Whatever, you know, the watch investors will tell you, that, oh, the price is going to keep going, everything, the price eventually going to level off. And eventually, as you see more and more watches come onto the market, you have a lot of people right now buying that brand because they're like, oh, I'll just sell it, make money. A lot of guys are doing that. I can think of a few YouTube knuckleheads, and you know, I can guarantee you they're not going to hold on to their Rolexes. They got their hands on it, they're going to wait, buy and sell, and you know what, that's great. They make a little money doing so, awesome. But remember, when you buy a watch for an investment, buy it and don't ever wear it, because people don't want to buy a scratched up hooker stretched bracelet watch for top value. You might get a moron who might, but that's generally, I would never spend my hard-earned money on something like that. But again, to each their own, always buy what makes you happy. And just know, no matter what your price point is, no matter what your budget, whether you have the money or don't have the money, whether you mentally are like, I can't spend that much, I can't rationalize that amount of money on it, there is something for everyone in the watch market. There is a watch for everyone at every price point, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to get an incredible quality watch. Invicta is just one of the many brands, but I hope that kind of answers the question on why the brand is as affordable as it is, in my opinion. So, all right, guys, have a great weekend. Subscribe to the channel, and take care.